Hey everyone, Sam Signorelli, HUM Fencing. Welcome back to Can Haz Armory, this time the body cord edition. Knowing how to fix your body cord is actually a very important skill. It is probably the most common repair that armorers do aside from a broken wire and a weapon. They're easy to fix. You just need to know what parts go where and how to do it. So there are three basic designs we tend to see. The German style, the Leon Paul style, and the French style. We'll go over those real quick. So we're going to start off with a German style. 2-pin cord. Generally, it is among the different makes, Favero and Ullman and All-Star and the Chinese knockoffs. They're defined by one thing primarily, and that is a hard plastic shell around both ends. Okay, and it's fairly robust. It protects the pins and the wires very well, but it does have one major problem. You tend to get breaks right here. So if you're extending your arm and the weapon goes off target, it's because you're stretching the cable and the broken wires separate and break the circuit, just like pushing the tip down. There are a couple different styles of pins also. This one, if you can see, has little spring leaves that expand out. So when you put it in the socket, it gets pressed down and it's trying to expand back out to its rest state, and that's how it maintains contact in the socket. It does matter where the pin's going to put together. The B pin, which is the narrow one here, 3mm wide pin, always connects to the wire in foil and to one of the wires in épée. The C pin in foil is always the ground line, and it's also the ground line in the C pin is ground line in épée as well. In the 3-pin end, again, they're A, B, and C. B being the middle, A the closest to it, C the farthest away. The only reason I have that distance is to make it idiot-proof. The one goes in the socket one way. Again, this is the body cord clip in saber and foil. That's the wire in foil. Other wire in épée. That's always the ground line. Those are the German style. There's also the French style, typically a Priere. This is an older one because they're normally orange now. This has a rubber cover over the back end. You pull it off, and you see it has a hard body underneath it, but the rubber serves to give a little more give so it doesn't break as often. Front end, again, a 2-pin cord, no cover, 2-pin end, no cover. The pin orientation is exactly the same. Then you have the Leon Paul, which has solid pins, and they're solid because its the system to hold it in place is a small little plastic wing. And if you notice it, it's not exactly straight. They're kind of offset. When you push it into the socket, this happens. And it's trying to get back to this bent state, and that's how it maintains contact. Also, how the wires connected a little different. The big thing about the Leon Paul is the front end, called a bayonet. This is the B side right here. The C is this part right here. And when we go to how to fix them, we'll go over which goes where. Let's do that. Okay, so let's work on fixing this cord here. It actually is either broken wire or a loose screw inside. So first thing you have to do is you have to undo that little screw that's holding it together. And I have my handy dandy little screwdriver for that. So I'm going to undo it. Little nut in the back. It's going to fall out. Right there. Right. There's a nut. Screw the back to come out like that. Take the clip out. Take the casing apart, and here's what it looks like inside. This is all it is. You have the wire coming up. The C side's up here, B side's down there. And we'll take it out. And see if I can give it a little tug, see if you can see where the break is. There it is. If you look at it stretching, there's a broken wire right there. So I'm going to slide this back until I can see it. And there's the break. Right in front of my thumbnail. So see it's separating a little, you see a little bit of a gap right there. That's the break. So what we do is this. Now the Favero cord that I use in my own cords, you know it has a black stripe on the C line. That's a sipping indicator. So I'm going to take this, take my trimmers, clip it a little farther back of where the break was, cut it off. I'm going to get rid of this strain relief and put a new one on. It is heat shrink. And when I apply heat to it, it will shrink down to about half its size and will act as a strain relief and kind of widen the radius of the bending of the wire. I'm going to separate these a little bit. Take my wire strippers, I'm going to strip some off. Now, how far you strip it is largely up to you. I have a problem when I see wires that are stripped just barely long enough to get to the screw that holds them in place. I prefer to put a little longer. I'll show what I mean there. So let's go back to the pins. Okay, here's the C pin. Screwdriver, the little screw right there. I'm not going to take it out all the way. I'm going to just take it and back it off a bit and then pull the excess wire out. Now, you can see how far this wire was stripped. Well, far enough for the wire to get plenty to get onto. In fact, if you look, you can kind of see that flat spot right there, and that's where the screw was. There's plenty of wire for it to grab onto. That one's gone. Screw can stay in. There's a little recess in the bottom of the pin. I'm backing the screw out to the point where the wire can go in. I'm going to take the wire, I'm going to turn it so it's nice and compact. It'll go in, slips on, crank it back down. Now, I know some armorers will tin the wire with solder. I do not have a solder pot, and I have a tendency to over tin the wires when I do that, so I don't do it. It's a good thing to do. It's not really necessary in some instances. If you're in a rush to get it fixed, as long as you have enough wire getting under the screw, you're good. Some companies put that little metal ferrule on the end, which does the job. It gives the screw something to bite into, but the problem is it's hard to get out sometimes. So there's that. Put the B back on. So now the pins are on. And now I'm going to set it up for the heat shrink. So I'm going to put the pins back into the casing where they were. Going to right about there. You see where it is. The idea is that the casing will actually bite down on this part of the heat shrink and hold it in place. That's how far it's going to be. And take it out real quick. And we'll hold on for a second. I'll show the heat gun I use. Stand by. Okay, so here is my heat gun used for the heat shrink. It's a nice industrial job, and it stands up by itself. Turn it on, and I'm going to run this heat shrink over it, and you'll watch it shrink down over the wire. As the heat hits it, it shrinks down. Get both sides. All it has to be. And you see how now it's shrunk down nice and tight, and it shouldn't move too much. It'll serve its purpose when I put it back together. So we'll do that now. Okay, so the heat shrinks down. Let's put it back together. Sometimes assembly is the hardest part of the job, especially with an Ullman cable. So that in there fits in little recesses. And put the top casing on, making sure that it's very flat there. Then put the clip back on. Put the screw in. Put the nut in. Screwdriver. And that's how you fix the front end of that body cord. The Ullman style cord that has the metal clip, you have to take that clip off first and put it on last because it doesn't help to hold the casing together like the Favero does, and you have to get off to get the rest of the casing apart. Next we'll look at the Priere, the French one. Okay, so the Priere is not actually broken. I'm just going to show it to you. Again, you pull the rubber boot back and off. These little nubs here are little holes just for the nubs to hold the casing on. Pull it back and you see here's what it looks like inside. Now one thing to note is that these screws here, unlike the screw in the Favero, are brass, and if you over crank them, they will break, and it's a pain in the butt to get it out. So be careful when you tighten it up. A lot of times on these, you'll see people have stripped the wire back, and they'll strip it like back down to here. And the problem that creates is if the wire gets loose, it flies over here, touches over on this side, and shorts out. It's just bad. When you strip your wire, just make it so it comes up to the base, and you don't have anything extra hanging out. Also, with the German ones, don't strip the entirety of the wire. I saw one once on Fencing Net where the entire interior was stripped. The guy was wondering why it wasn't working because all these strands are touching each other. The insulation's here for a reason. There's that one. The front end on a Priere. A little different issue here is it threads through the case, goes up through here, splits apart, and comes down around. So it's a good idea to get a little long of it out there. put it inside, then pull it tight. The difference in the pins, we said the Leon Paul are solid. There are two different kinds of pins otherwise. Kind of important to know. We have the split pins here. We have these here that have a little bird cage around it. And the reason that spins like that is it's supposed to break off corrosion. The problem is it's hard to adjust back out when it isn't making contact. With these pins here, you can put a screwdriver in and spread the leaves apart very easily, like that. These one you can't do it as well because you have to be very, very careful doing it. If you have the cord wobbling in the socket, stretch the pins out so it'll make better contact. And that's other than that, the wires go in the same place as on the Favero and the old German style. Let's look at the Leon Paul next. Okay, Leon Paul has another issue that needs to be concerned with, what armors like to call Leon Paul disease. And this is simply the fact you have a copper wire and in contact with a steel pointed screw. This connection is by way of the wire going through the pin, and simply as you crank it in, it pierces the insulation and makes contact with the wire. There's no need to strip the wire at all. The problem we come up with this, so is you have a copper wire and a steel screw, the tissue going through it, you get corrosion. And it can really bring the resistance very high. So what do? Very simple. Put on the screw, undo it a little bit, go back down a little bit, nice and tight, and you will have broken the corrosion off, and you'll see the corrosion resistance will drop like a rock. That's issue on the front side. The back side, the bayonet end, this is where it gets a little difficult. Here's a bayonet connector. Again, you don't see these very often anymore. Typically see 2-pin, but you do see bayonets every so often. Pull the cover back. Here's the inside of it. Has the piercing screws. But where does things go? First off, this is the B. This is the one that sits on the little plate on the inside of the socket. Make sure it's nice and tight. This is the C side right there. Make sure that's nice and tight. That's in contact with other parts of the with the top of the socket bracket. Where the wire comes in, it comes in these little channels here, up and loop through. So it doesn't matter which one goes where. The C line's going to go on this one here that's in line with this small screw here. The B side's going to come in and be in line with this one. And again, all you need to do is push it through, crank the screw tight, and then it'll pierce insulation and you got a good connection. A note on bayonet parts. If you're going to use bayonet parts, use Leon Paul. Do not use a Chinese knockoff or the Omen. They don't work as well. Sometimes they don't fit with Leon Paul sockets. In the case of the Germans, they took away the pointed screws to get flat, which removes the best part of the design. Also, if you have the wire that's not a Leon Paul wire, it doesn't fit through these channels, you have to just come up, strip the wire, stick it through, and crank it down. The important part is to make it fit and make sure the wire's in the right place. So that's how you look at these and put them back together. Let's look at a 3-pin end next on a German side. Okay, so here's the 3-pin end on a German style cord. This is a Favero. And the same idea, you take it apart. There's no clip to worry about. However, the interior is a little different. Take the casing off. You have this little clamp here that has to come out. At least part of it does. I'm going to take that one out all the way. Oh, I'm just going to get loose because this will swing aside and get off of the string. Oops, oh, it came out. Thing in there. Now, Favero pins kind of snap into place, not so much on other cords. Again, it does matter where the wires go. There is again A, B, and C line. The interior of other cords don't have this clamp. They simply have a loose fit. There's a little bit of interior structure you have to get around. You'll see that when you open it up. But the same deal here. It's got a broken wire on it. I'm going to cut it off and put the heat shrink on. I have a little wider heat shrink for this one. The heat shrink we have, nice little bag here. You can buy it at any electronics store. You can buy it at Fry's, whatever. I prefer for all 3 lines, 1/4-inch heat shrink. For 2 lines, like the front end of the body cord, 3/16. And for the single line, if you're going to be doing like the string windage on a mass cord or the A line, it's going to be 1/8-inch heat shrink. Doesn't have to be white. I make it white because if it goes international, they want white for TV. But there's that there. And I will fix this one and be right back to you. Hang on. Okay, we're back. As you can see, I've already done the heat shrink on this, and we're going to put the casing back together. So we take, in this case, the little clamp first. Now I'm going to put it up here so a little bit of the heat shrink is past the clamp. Get the screw back on there. So this is not a consideration with the Ullman cord, but it was with Vivero. Start a little bit going. Make sure they're both going in place. I'm going to tighten up until they're both going. There it goes. And you can see it's starting to tighten up. Get a little bit of heat shrink past the front side of the bracket. Now tighten up a little more. There you go. I know the pins are in the right place. Put the casing back together. The joy of the Vivero is that because they have little recesses to hold the pins, you don't have to struggle to get the casing together so much. And this is ready to go. Once I test it, make sure it's good to go. Okay, let's talk about the A-line for a second. On a foil and saber cord, the A-line is the alligator clip. Now, this goes to, like I said, it goes to this pin here. That's the A-line. And if you notice what I have here is I have 3 layers of heat shrink, one of each of the size I mentioned earlier. And that purpose is to minimize the bend radius, so it doesn't get a real sharp bend right here and break the wire. The wire must be visibly soldered to the clip, as this is. But also, the thing I do on it is I buy Mueller brand clips, number 27. That's the model number. And they always come with this screw here. I'll take the wire and I'll run it under the screw, crank it down tight, and then I'll run it to the top here, and that's where the solder joint is. Now, the reason I do that is a couple reasons. One is I have a nice mechanical connection with the screw being down. And if that screw comes loose, the solder joints there take the strain and have connection. If the solder joint breaks loose, the screw should be down tight. My problem with Ullman, when they take out the screw out, they put a little solder ball here, and if it breaks loose, which it does frequently, you have no connection. Also, right here, you can see the wire is visibly soldered to the clip. Also, the screw is actually on this side of the clip. The solder is on that side. So both sides of the clip have connection. It's an easy fix. It happens all the time. You know, they get a break right here, they typically do. But that's something else to look about. The distance, the length of this cable, the A-line, must be at least 40 centimeters, 40 centimeters of free cable from here to where it enters the back casing. Why is that? That way if you turn, you don't pull it off because it's too short. Sometimes you get a body cord and they've stripped about that far back and that's all is loose. Pull it apart so you have 40. My cables when I make them are 3 feet long, so there's plenty of A-line to play with there. As far as epee goes, the repair procedures for the 3-pin ends are the same for both ends. Doesn't matter which side you do as long as all the pins go to the right pins, A to A, B to B, B to C. If you have them swapped around, it won't work. And that's how you fix a body cord. As always, happy armoring.